Welcome to the Home Staging Show. This is Season 3, Episode 1, and this is your host, Cindy Lin. Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you had a fantastic holiday and a fabulous new year. I did a bunch of work while binge watching Netflix over the holidays, and it's actually really nice with very little emails and phone call interruptions. And I actually wish it lasted a little bit longer. If you come on the website today for the show notes, you might also notice that the website looks a bit different. I took some time over the break and redid our entire website. As you know, we're going virtual this year for our staging company, so I really want the website to be more of a blog and podcast focus. I hope you like the new layout. I definitely think it's much easier to read, and the archive looks so much better. So if you want to access the show notes from now on, just go to stagemore.com, and you can click on the main menu bar. You'll see the episodes link there. Click on that, and it will take you into our episode archives. Super easy. If this is your first time listening to the show, I'm Cindy Lin. I'm the founder and owner and chief of everything officer at Stagemore Home Staging. I've been a home stager for about 10 years in San Francisco Bay Area, and you're listening to the Home Staging Show podcast, where we talk about all things real estate, home staging, and styling your home. On today's show, I'm interviewing Lisa, host of HGTV Show Critical Listing in Canada. She's one amazing lady. I just love her energy. She's personable, energetic, and incredibly knowledgeable about real estate and selling houses. If you guys haven't seen her YouTube channel yet, definitely check it out. I love the episode where she practices Chinese in the car with her husband. I think it's totally adorable, and her accent is amazing. She has some really fantastic things to say about her time on the show, how to target buyers, and how to avoid common real estate sales mistakes. We also talk about renovations for selling. She had a great tip on working with contractors that's very, very applicable even if you're not selling your home. She also shared her biggest lesson about selling real estate from doing the HGTV show Critical Listing. And she also shared 4 questions to ask to figure out your buyer's target lifestyle and a real life scenario on how those 4 questions work. I just love that she gave very practical tips on how to target your buyers and figure out their lifestyle for staging. I'm actually going to write a blog post about that as well and post it on the blog tomorrow. And I'll link it on the show notes as well after the blog post is published. So check back for the blog post on Thursday for the free download of the 4-question worksheet and my take on it. I also want to apologize in advance. When we were recording the episode, I had a cold, so I was more incoherent than normal. And as usual, if you enjoy the show, please take a moment to rate and write us a review on iTunes. It really helps others to find the show, and we can book more amazing guests like Lisa. So without further ado, let's start the show. I watched a few of your episodes, and I love the part where you're in the car and you were learning Chinese. And I just want to say your accent's actually very right on.
Is it really? Woohoo!
Yeah, I speak fluent Chinese, so you and your husband sound great in the car.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you
kudos
so
for that.
I gotta keep practicing.
No, it's good. Why are you learning Chinese though? Do you have a lot of Chinese buyers coming in?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot, especially because of the university here, and we get a lot of foreign buyers here. I mean, a lot of, like, internationally, a lot of people look at Canada as like a safe place to put money. Financially, we're really stable. The banks are pretty stable here. The government's stable here. We don't have like big booms or big crashes. At least that's the way it's kind of gone in the last like 20 or so years. So a lot of people like to put we have like very slow and steady climb versus like, in the US, your real estate market, it was like booming, 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 and
Mm-hmm.
then all of a sudden it went down in 2008, and it's
Mm-hmm.
climbing again, but like there's definitely like bigger gains and then bigger falls kind of thing. So a lot of
Yeah.
people internationally, because I think it's mostly because we didn't crash in 2008. A lot of people internationally have been putting their money here. So
Interesting. Yeah, there's definitely a huge Chinese immigrant population in Canada for sure.
yeah, especially even more so on the like Vancouver west, like the
Mm-hmm.
west side, closer to where you are. That like Canada, the part of Canada that's just above you. There's tons over
Yeah.
there.
My parents love Vancouver. They're like, it's the best Chinese food we've ever eaten, like outside of home, of
China, yeah,
course.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
amazing.
hmm So that's really cool. And so tell us, how did you get into real estate?
So for myself, like real estate was something that just kind of happened for me. I was while I was going through school, I have a Bachelor of Science, and which has nothing to do with real estate. But I was while I was going through school, I was doing a lot of side jobs, and a lot of these side jobs were selling, mostly in retail. But I realized that I really like selling, and it like through a recommendation of my mother, because I got to a point in life where I'm like, I have no idea what the hell to do. Like, there's so many, so I had so many interests and things that I liked, but there was no clear cut path in
Mm-hmm.
putting all these things together. Like, I always had this struggle, like left brain versus right brain, and entrepreneurship seemed to be the thing that kind of satisfied both sides of that. And for me, it just happened to be real estate, where, you know, the negotiating part and the number crunching part, that's the part that for me satisfies that analytical side of me. But then, you know, the marketing and branding and, you know, working with stagers and stuff like that, that kind of satisfied the creative side of me. So it just kind of happened, I guess, to answer it quickly.
That's very cool. Actually, the funny story is that's how I got into real estate as well, from my
Oh,
mom's
really?
suggestion. Yeah.
See, moms know.
Moms, yeah, they know. Yeah, definitely. And so how long have you been a realtor now?
I've been a realtor for just over 10 years. So I'm
Wow.
selling mostly in the Toronto area of Canada.
Uh-huh.
People, so I mean, my full name is Lisa Colalillo, but people here um, now know me by my brand, which is Lisa in the City.
Mm-hmm.
And there's two reasons I kind of created that. One was because Lisa in the City is a lot easier to remember
It
and
is.
spell than my last name.
Mm-hmm.
and and number two, I'm a city girl at heart, so that's kind
Yeah.
of where all that came from.
Were you born and raised in Toronto?
I was, yeah.
Wow. How has Toronto changed?
Like in the last 10 years type thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know what? A lot has changed. I mean, just in terms of development, like I mean, it's become a really big city, like globally, even
Mm-hmm.
just recognition wise. I mean, we have things like Justin Bieber and Drake who bring a lot of attention to like but
That's
then there's
funny.
like there's things like we have the Toronto Film Festival, which gains a lot of notoriety and or attention just
Mm-hmm.
in like the media and film and television industry. Like a lot more people in that industry are aware of Toronto because there's a lot that gets filmed here,
Mm-hmm.
which on screen always tends to look like New York or Chicago, but isn't.
Right.
And then, you know, we have different festivals. Like Toronto happens to host one of the largest Caravana festivals outside of the Caribbean,
Hmm.
which brings, I mean, I think Toronto brings in something like 25 million visitors a year just with tourism.
Right.
So I think what's changed the most is the amount of attention that Toronto has gotten over the years, and so it just brings more people in.
So what type of buyers or sellers do you normally work with?
Um, in the last few years, it's been more in the luxury
Mm.
um, arena. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, my passion really in this business has become to help homeowners attract high-paying dream buyers and getting them to bring you offers. And I think where I have the most fun is as we get into sort of like luxury dream homes. That's where that's what I really love to work with. I mean,
Hmm.
Toronto is such a big city that you really could be working with anybody in this city, but that's my particular sweet spot.
That's very cool. And so I know you've been on HGTV for the show Critical Listing. How has that experience been for you?
Oh my God, it's so amazing. Like I told you, I have this like whole like right brain, left brain struggle.
Hmm.
So like being able to like do some really fun stuff on TV has, I mean, it helps bring attention to who I am and what I love to do. But even aside from that, I mean, it's so much fun. It really is fun. So um, it's like another outlet to be able to do what I do and even on a bigger scale.
That's very cool. So can you tell us about the premise of the show for the US audience who's not familiar with the show?
Yeah, so Critical Listing, it actually aired on HGTV Canada. So if you're from the US, you won't be able to see it.
Hmm.
But the premise of the show is that we go and meet with homeowners who have bought a house but still own their current home and haven't put it on the market yet. And so they're holding these two homes, freaking out. And
Mm.
for the price that they need, their home usually it's not ready for market, especially to get the price that they want. So myself, along with a landscaper and interior designer, go in there, create a plan in terms of what's the best way to set up the house so that they can get the best price for their neighborhood. So
So,
we do
yeah, okay.
interior renovations, but also landscape
Ah, okay. I think
stuff,
that's
which
really
is
cool.
different.
No, but I think that's really cool because I think people often overlook the landscaping, but it's actually most important because that's the first thing people see from the curb.
Yeah, it's the curb appeal. I mean, sometimes it's the front of the house, sometimes it's the back of the house. But the thing that's really cool that I've realized, even like through this show, is that, you know, it is a lot of fun to do like the kitchens and bathrooms types of renovations because you
Hmm.
get to enjoy those things like right away and all that. But if you think about it, landscaping, it actually looks better 10 years from now, whereas that brand new kitchen looks outdated 10 years from now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So landscaping is it's an interesting I mean you may not do necessarily full-blown landscaping right before you put it on the market, but just in terms of renovations in general, landscaping can be really fun because as it sort of matures as it like a fine wine, you know?
Yeah, and actually landscaping can be quite, I don't want to say expensive, but it could be a significant investment. Like if you buy a full-grown tree, for example, it can cost a lot of money. Whereas if you buy something that's like, like a little bit younger, like when it, and then have it grown into its shape, that's much more affordable and
Yeah.
affordable
And as
run
long as you
too.
have the patience, especially if you're still going to be living there,
Hmm.
I mean it can be really nice to watch it, just blossom before your eyes type thing.
Yeah, so I think that's very, very cool. So
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about the situations that the sellers on the show are. So when they're basically now own two houses, they have two mortgages, it's a lot of pressure. So what are some of the things
Oh
that they
yeah.
can do to help themselves?
I think the best thing they can do to help themselves is to sell high and fast because
Right.
just the stress alone of, even if they're not necessarily caring about, like if they haven't closed on the house that they bought yet, knowing that that's coming really quick can be very stressful. And, they say like the number one thing people fight about in marriages and relationship is money. So I think the best thing they can do for themselves is to put themselves in a position where um, they can sell quickly but still sell at a fantastic price. And so I personally think that you need to work with professionals that really know what they're doing. They know who's the dominant buyer demographic for your area. They know what they want, what they're willing to pay for, and how to set up your home to be a match for that.
Hmm. So when you are planning, so like for example, when seller comes to you and they want to sell, what is like a better way to plan this? So, like should they once they know they want to sell, should they start looking for a house to buy? Or like how should they plan the timing out?
Well, I think when they start knowing that a move is going to happen, even if they're just sort of looking around and they haven't necessarily bought yet. Like, I don't, just to sort of back it up, I don't think it's bad necessarily to sell before you buy because depending on the person's situation, if you're living in a house that or the next house that you're looking for very specific need, may not, and your house is going to sell fairly quickly. You may not want to sell and then be in a pressured spot to buy something and just buy anything. You may be looking for something more specific. So if that's the case, I don't think that there's necessarily anything wrong with buying first before you sell.
Mm-hmm.
But when you know that there's a move coming and it's something that you're sort of looking for, consult with your realtor, or if you specifically work with a stager yourself. I mean, your realtor can definitely recommend someone to you, but it's always a good idea to start looking at what are the things that you're going to need to do along the way to get it ready for market, in order to have the absolute best impression on the market and get you the most amount of money. So I think the sooner you can at least know what it is you're going to need to do, then you can plan that better. Whereas if you've already bought and you have no idea what you need to do, that's going to create a lot of pressure
Mm-hmm.
and stress. We don't like that.
Yeah, I find that the best way to reduce stress is to have really good planning, because the more organization and planning sellers usually have, they can really kind of minimize the risk of, putting themselves into a situation where they can be really stressed out for.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, as long as you know what you're getting into, then you can plan for that, right? So it's like
Mm-hmm.
information is key. And if you at least have an idea of what it is you're going to need to plan for, then it's easier for you to work things out and know, even if you buy a house, well, maybe you're not going to close until 3 months from now, because you're going to need that amount of time to set up your house, put it on the market, and close. But if you just buy a house having absolutely no idea what it's going to take for you to sell your house for the best price and get it ready for market, and you're closing on that house in a month from now, you're going to be freaking out because it's not enough time.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's just putting yourself in the best position possible that you can.
Yeah. And I know on the show you guys do a lot of renovation as well. Do you want to talk about that a little bit? Like, what are some of the things sellers should know about renovations? Should they or shouldn't they? And what do you usually recommend them to do?
A good point, because I think one of the things, like even just that question in general, should they or shouldn't they? I think in general, most sellers can initially be a little bit hesitant about just the idea of reinvesting in a house that you're moving out of. It seems a little counterintuitive. Like, I'm moving out of this place, but you want me to put more money into this place. How does that make sense? I'd rather put the money into the house I'm moving into versus the one I'm moving out of. So it can seem a little counterintuitive, but the thing is that you're leaving money on the table. Like, there's money that you're not making by not putting your best foot forward when it comes to your house. And so I think the best thing, I always think it's best to, uh, make your house be like the best option for buyers in your neighborhood. And that's how you get the most amount of money. Like, I think about it like, you know, it's kind of like dating, because it's like matchmaking, but you're matchmaking buyers and homes.
Mm-hmm.
But if for anyone who's single, or even if you're not single, at some point, when you were single, you know, you're never going to go on a date and like not take a shower, brush your hair, brush your teeth. You're never going to show up to a date, smelling like you just ran a marathon.
Right.
Especially if you actually have an interest in that person. So, and it's the same thing. It's like, you want to put your best foot forward and do that. Like, when it comes to renovations, the most important thing, because it can get costly, is that you want to make sure that you're doing the renovations that make the most sense and can be the most profitable for your area. So it's the thing that's you're looking for, the thing that what's going to lure in people and make them want to buy. That's the question you should be asking, is what makes the buyer for this area want to buy. Because when you bought the house or place, even if you've been living there only 5 years, people moving in might be in the same situation you were in when you first bought the house, but now you're in a new situation, which is making you move out of it. So you have to think from the new buyer, not necessarily from where you are now. So it's putting yourself in the mind frame of the buyer. If I were to give one tip when it comes to renos, because let's face it, renos always take a little bit longer
Mm-hmm.
than you expect.
Yep.
If I were to give you one tip, the best tip I've ever gotten is when you're dealing with any kind of contractor is to negotiate one price for them to finish the job and then tell them, give them a little bit of a better price if they finish the job correctly by a certain date.
Mm.
And that'll help you to get the renovation done faster. So it creates a win-win situation. They're going to be happy doing the job faster and getting paid, and you're going to be happier because they're out of your house and you can move forward. So that would be one tip I would say is a great one to consider when doing renovations. And that's even if you're not going to put your house on the market.
That's an amazing tip because basically you're giving them a bonus and you let them know that that's coming so they will work extra hard to make sure they're not effing it up. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great one, and it's you're putting the contractors in a position where they actually are going to have the same motivation and goals that you have. So, um, I would totally try that.
If the sellers wants to do renovations, how much like what is the timeline and budget they should be expecting?
It really depends on the renovation. I mean, a total kitchen gut is going to be it's going to take a lot longer than if you're just doing, paint and, maybe changing the accessories of the house or
Hmm.
just changing the furniture. Paint and furniture, you could probably do that in a week or two if
Hmm.
everything lines up exactly as you want. You're doing an entire kitchen renovation, that could be a month,
Right.
and that's still being pretty aggressive depending on you know how many the materials that you're using, and is it easy to get everything in and have it all ordered and ready. So there's just so many factors, and so that's why the more time you give yourself, the better it is for you.
I agree with that a lot, especially there's always delays. We just had this project we were supposed to stage in October and now it's December. It's like we're recording this on the 9th, so it's I mean they're still not on the market. It's still being finished. So it can really delay the timing of the listing.
Absolutely. And that's going to cost you money if I mean, in the case of the show, there's people that are holding two homes at
Mm,
the same time. Are not yet, but they're getting close to that. So, not only do the renovations cost you money, but the amount of time that you're not yet able to put it on the market, that also is going to increase your costs and eat into profit. So that's why, like, doing the things that really matter the most are going to give you the best bang for your buck, and organizing it in a way, whether it's doing things like negotiating a certain price just for completion and then a better price for actually having them do it on time. you know all these different kinds of strategies can help to put keep more money in your pocket versus other people's.
that's a very good point. And I love that you brought up actually kitchen and bath falls out of trend within 5 to 10 years. So when you guys are doing renovation, what kind of materials are you guys looking at?
Well, I mean, the big thing with staging versus like staging renos versus, you're going to live in this house reno
Mm-hmm.
is, you're trying to neutralize it. If you're trying to make the home appeal to the most amount of people as possible, even though you are probably going to be targeting a certain type of buyer. You really, and I think that's a pretty, general well-known fact, is like the whole thing, you want to depersonalize a home as much as possible, make it clean, fresh, something that really appeals to the demographics of the buyer moving in, but isn't so personalized that there's certain things that are going to um, just detract people from being able to see the house, because all they can see is your paisley wallpaper or whatever. So like that's the big thing, is that you really want to, like right now, one of the things that I'm seeing a lot of, even just in terms of color trends, is I'm seeing a lot more use of grays versus white, and not necessarily dark grays, but gray is like the new white right now, where I'm seeing a lot more laminate floors and even hardwood that have that sort of slate gray tone,
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
it has a modern look to it. It's still neutral, it's still bright, but it's a little bit different. So it's an upgrade from the typical white.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's like things like that where, you just kind of have certain elements in there that you're trying to depersonalize it and make it as fresh and interesting to the most amount of people.
That's really cool. And what are some of the biggest lessons you've learned from doing the show?
Um, the biggest lessons. I think, let me think about this. I'm trying to give you a really good answer here.
No worries. Take your time.
I think the biggest thing is that you really need to know when it comes to the buyer, you really need to know like what is their life like.
Mm,
Um, And there's so much online resources that can give you information in terms of demographics of neighborhoods. It's kind of scary the amount of information you can get right now online in terms of who's living in the neighborhood and
hmm
where are they moving from. Like you can your realtor can really be very specific in terms of the majority of people that are moving into your neighborhood are coming from this neighborhood. Um, and it's not going to be 100%, even if it's like 20 or 30% of the market share. You'll have an idea of their age, the type of education they have, what's their income level, what kind of career are they managerial level, are they whatever it is. I mean, there's so many different things that you can take all those statistics that are available in terms of like who is the buyer and start to really tune into what's important in their life.
hmm
And when you know what's important in their life, then you can set up your house to be like, this is it. If someone's starving and they have a sweet tooth, and you're like, okay, I know that you're hungry and you have a sweet tooth and you bake cookies, they're coming. They're
Right.
gonna find you. Bake it and they will come. So,
Exactly.
and I think that's the same thing that we have to think of when it comes to how to stage and present your home, so that the name of the game at the end of in when it comes to real estate and putting your house on the market is how do you attract the most amount of people and get them the most interested in your house so that there's urgency and they're willing to give you their best offer possible.
That's very cool. Thank you for
So,
that. I
no
just
problem.
love that you really hone in on the importance of buyers because I think that's really important. And we have a DIY kind of stage your house type of online course, and that's something I teach as well. Because I really do think knowing your buyer is so important. Like if you are selling toward, millennial buyers, for example, you're not
Mhm.
gonna stage the house using, like more traditional furniture. It's just not what their age bracket is responding to. So
Absolutely. Like, if you even if you're just looking at different age groups have different values. They've grown up different ways, and so they're interested in different features and even interested in different lifestyles. So, if you look at a millennial, they're more tech savvy in general. They're probably a lot less handy. I'm being very stereotypical. I'm not saying all millennials are like this, so
hmm
don't chew me up. But like, if we're being very stereotypical here, it's they probably have more of an office job. They're at the beginning stages of their career, so they're putting in a lot of hours. If they either don't have a family and they're still single, because a lot of them are getting married and having kids later, or they're just starting to have their family if they're an older millennial.
hmm
And they've also grown up in the nice homes of their boomer parents, and
Mm,
so they're used to more turnkey types of homes. Like if you just
that's a
kind of
great
break it
point.
down like that, that gives you a very general idea of the typical millennial. Now, keep in mind too that millennials in different areas are going to be different. So if you're in a more rural town or whatever, millennials in your town are going to be a little bit different than millennials that live in San Francisco or New York City. Like it's just going to be different.
Right.
So that's why, that's why it's so important to understand the demographics in your area, your specific area.
That's such a good point. I love that you brought up their parents and what kind of home they're used to growing up in. So their expectation is going to be different
Yeah.
than the older generations who are more used to the hands-on approach and the kind of fixer-upper kind of thing.
Yeah, boomers definitely have, and even boomers are changing now. I mean, as they were raising their families, they definitely had more of an appreciation in terms of adding value to a property. It was something that they saw as a great way to sort of save money. And because they were handy and they could do the work themselves, it was cheaper for them to be able to do that and do it the way they liked it. But millennials and just younger generation in general, we're working more. Both if there's a couple or a family, both partners are working. There's a lot less time for that kind of stuff, and we're not as handy, so it just doesn't match the lifestyle.
That's a really good point. And also, you had told me one of the biggest lessons you've personally learned about staging when it comes to selling a home is that it's not just about making the home look pretty, although it is a great first step. It's actually about staging the home to match the lifestyle of incoming buyers into the neighborhood. When I read that in your email, I was like, hallelujah, because that's exactly how I feel and teach about home staging. So, how can homeowners figure that out for their own home?
Well, I think kind of like I was mentioning before, there's a lot of information statistic wise that will give you, and a lot of this you can probably even get from your realtor if you want to get really specific. I'm sure there's probably even just some general stuff you can get online on your
Mhm.
own.
Mhm.
But like I know here, if I go, like, because I'm a realtor, I have access to a lot of statistics. So I'm sure that realtors in any city will probably also have access to this type of information where you can really get specific about the types of buyers that are moving into a certain neighborhood. If you can get that information, that's going to help you decipher what's the lifestyle, and a realtor is also going to know that. If you live in the neighborhood, you may also notice like who's moving into the neighborhood more and more.
Mhm.
Are they younger? Are they older? Do they have kids? Do they not have kids? Like, just through observation, but even through doing some research, like, you can really get a lot of information. If I were to break it down, I would say, like, you kind of want to answer 4 questions. So who's the buyer, which you can do that through observation or research. What's their lifestyle like? Work life, personal life, what does their daily life kind of look like? What's most important to them or would make their life easy at home? And what features can you add to your house that will help them with that? So if you can kind of break that down, I think that's what's going to help a seller the most, if you can answer those questions.
I think that's a great point. And so, in your experience working as a real estate agent, even though when buyers say they don't want a turnkey home, do they still really actually always want a turnkey home?
I would say that more people want a turnkey home than don't want a turnkey home. I'm in the last few years especially, I'm noticing that more and more it's strictly investors that are looking for like fixer upper type homes, but people who are looking to live in a home, more people than not want something that they can just move into. And let's face it, like, if of your 5 senses, your eyes are the fastest thing to make a first impression. And so visually, when you look at something and it's a turnkey type of home, it's staged, it looks beautiful, it doesn't smell like cigarettes and dog, which I love dogs, by the way, but I'm just saying.
I do too,
um
but smelling someone else's dog, it's different than your own dog.
yeah, or it's like a wet dog and it's like, you know um I love my husband too, but sometimes he's a little stinky. So, it doesn't mean I want to smell that all the time. So, I just think that, like, if a turnkey home, people, they always react. It creates urgency when it meets all the needs of a buyer. So in the end, as a seller, even, um, it's better to always have a turnkey home versus not, because you're just going to attract way more buyers, because there's way more buyers that want that and are willing to pay for it. That's the key. One thing I was going to say, like, in terms of lifestyle, one thing I just wanted to add there is that, the whole thing with whether you're staging or renovating, like, whatever extent you're setting up the home for the market, when it comes to really setting it up to match the lifestyle of the buyer, it's not just about the house either. Like, you want to stage the house, set it up, make it look amazing, but the whole idea behind staging is that you're highlighting the best features of the house that match the buyer's lifestyle. So don't just focus on the features of the house. You definitely want to do that, but also focus on some of the features of the neighborhood and area that match the lifestyle. So if it's a family that's moving into your neighborhood, like make sure you make available to these buyers the best daycares and schools and the ratings of these schools. Or if it's a couple that likes to entertain, let them know the hot spots of the area where they can get the best Mexican food or best coffee or espresso or whatever. Like those are things that also appeal to lifestyle. And if you match that, then that person is going to be like, this house and neighborhood is for me.
Hmm. Yeah, I totally agree with that. I help a family friend renting out their house, and I had to write their description for the real estate ad. And actually think it's really hard because you really want to paint an accurate picture of all the features and benefits of the home. You know, and especially with copywriting, they always say you want to highlight the features. I mean, sorry, the benefits, not necessarily the features, because people really
Sure.
want to know, like they want to know how it is to live in that house. Like, why is it great? Is it because it's easy access for commute, or is it going to have a really great school district? And so those are the things you want to highlight when you present your home for sale.
Absolutely. And I think that's a really great point because, like, I know for myself, one of the biggest things that I use is like more storytelling type
Mm,
marketing. So instead of
yeah.
saying, this is really the kitchen, this is the layout of this kitchen is really family sized, instead of saying some is a family sized kitchen, I'd rather say, the kids do their homework on the kitchen island while the hubby and I do this. And you you create the story for them of what it's like to live here. And that's what people want, the experience, not just the facts. And if
Yeah.
you can, people watch movies for that reason. So if you can, like, I like to leave little cards around the house to explain little stories and things that you can do with this place. And just imagine, putting your Christmas tree up here, or just imagine, if there's a lot of people who like to entertain, having a cocktail party in this huge kitchen.
Yeah. And I think storytelling is so important because it really helps to like it because I think most people don't think about it, but when the buyers see your listing on the internet, they really have no concept or frame work in terms of how they can frame this house. So if they're seeing a home, there's no captions, there's nobody walking through them on the internet. They really had to be able to decipher based on the information you provide them. So the better, like the more information you give them to help them paint an accurate picture about your listing, it's actually more beneficial for you to attract them to come to the open house.
Absolutely. Yeah, totally agree.
And I noticed that you are very social media savvy. Have you noticed, I mean, do buyers respond more to you on social media nowadays? Or is it still like the traditional kind of the sign in the yard or, virtual tour kind of thing?
I think social media has become really important in any kind of selling. I mean, whether it's real estate or anything that you're selling, because I mean, we live in an age where we don't actually need anything. It's everything that we want. You know what I mean? If it was just about having shelter, a tent would do. But
True.
like anything that we need, we're looking for experience. And that's why lifestyle marketing is so important. And I just think, of course, when it comes to sort of the traditional tools, I think those are important. So, lawn signs and MLS and all these things are super important to have, but it really is just scratching the surface. I mean, the
Mm.
amount of listings that are on there, regardless of the type of market that people are in, like there's always a lot to choose from, even if there's only five. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's all about, just really setting the stage and creating the experience that is going to make someone want to buy. And the thing is with storytelling and understanding who the buyer is and matching the lifestyle of the house to the buyer, all these things are going to really like just lure the buyer in, the one that is predominantly buying. There's going to be some buyers that come through and they're like, this is so not for me. But they probably were not going to buy in that area anyways because their lifestyle wouldn't have matched the area. If
Hmm.
you're setting it up in a way where all these things match, it's great. Sorry, when it comes to social media, I kind of went off topic there, but when it comes to
No,
social
sure.
media, I think, pictures and video, these things make people connect more, whether it's to the house or to the person selling. And the more, social media, although people don't really talk to each other face to face anymore,
I
it's
know.
still it's meant to connect people. And the more, I mean, you can really tell a lot more through, pictures and video, and social media gives you access to, create stories and connect with people and buyers, and for them to like you and to want to know what you do and how you do it, and be part of that. So I think social media is, if you're not using it, you're really missing out.
I agree with that. I was very surprised. Actually, a seller approached me through Facebook. They somehow found my Facebook page on the internet. And actually, I don't even update it very often. Like, I think there's some portfolio work on it, but that he was just like, I just love the way you stage houses, and we actually live in DC, but we're selling our house in San Francisco, where we moved to DC, basically. And I got a job through social media, and that was like obviously a pleasant surprise, but I was really surprised actually because I didn't think people will find me through those kind of channels.
Yeah, you know what? I think, and even some of my investors, for sure, people who are looking to hire someone, the best way to get insight on who they are in terms of personality, and whether or not you're going to like working with this person, is to do a quick Facebook search on the person, get an idea of, what kind of a person they're like,
Hmm.
and the good thing about social media is you get to, I mean, it's all edited. It's your life edited. So you get to determine the brand of who you are online.
Right.
So, you get to help create that first impression when people look you up, because it's a great safe way for customers or clients to get an idea of who you are, and they're going to know right away, like, I really want to work with Cindy. She's amazing, and I really like her personality. I feel I could trust her, and I would I'm going to call her. And then, maybe they look at someone else and they're like, "Oh my gosh, she doesn't watch The Voice. I'm not calling her."
Oh
Whatever, you
no.
know what I mean? So it's like, but you're putting your brand out there, and social media gives you access to that, and everybody is doing a little bit of background search before they pick up the phone. So
Oh yeah. I get so many calls. People are like, "Oh, I already Googled you on Yelp or on Twitter or on Instagram because I want to see what kind of work you do and what kind of, especially Yelp, I
yeah.
think. Because Yelp really, obviously they had the reviews and stuff like that. People can really get a really good idea what kind of a professional you are.
Yeah, I agree. So everybody who's listening who has a business, whether or not you're a stager, realtor, anything, like, you need to be on social media.
Yeah, at least have a good presence. It doesn't mean like you have to be obsessed about it, but definitely have some sort of a presence so people can find you, especially I
Yeah.
think in real estate. Yeah. And then what are some of the trends that you're seeing now in selling real estate?
Um, I guess if I were to summarize even just some of the things that we've kind of talked about, is like, turnkey over fixer upper, for
Mm,
sure. It's always better to be a turnkey home versus something that needs a lot of work. Um, Low maintenance backyards, I've been seeing a lot more of that,
right.
instead of just having lots of grass and gardens. Um, Although I'm seeing a lot of stand-up gardens now, believe it or not, people are a lot more into, and I guess this is also depends on where you're from, but I do see a lot more people wanting to, whether it's like herbs or little things, but
Yeah.
like kind of
Mm-hmm.
plant their own, more of an organic lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe not the sort of traditional farm-like gardens, but sort of stand-up.
Like
I
a
don't know. I've seen some.
container garden, you mean?
Yeah, like, either I've also seen, like, it's almost like a wall, like,
Oh, okay, a living wall.
yeah, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. So I've seen stuff like that. Like, I'm seeing that a lot more. I mean, kitchens and bathrooms, setting those up are have been very popular and continue to be, because kitchen is where it's kind of the center of the home a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
Spend a lot of time there. So that's still something that is quite popular. We talked a little bit about the use of gray tones as a new neutral
Mm-hmm.
color,
Yeah. The greenish.
instead of just the
Yeah.
white paint. Yeah. I'm seeing a lot of that just in terms of color trends. I'm also seeing a lot of changing light fixtures because sometimes, like I always say that the light fixtures are like the earrings that a woman puts on
Hmm.
to sort of just finalize her outfit. And light fixtures, they can look really outdated depending on how long the person has been there. So sometimes just updating that can give a whole new look to a place. So I'm seeing that as well.
That's very cool. And I'm big on generational selling because I know for my own staging business, I target a certain type of homes that attract a certain type of home buyers. What are some of the
Mhm.
trends that you're seeing with the different generations?
Um, I think if I were to sort of generalize it, I would say it's kind of like what you're saying. If I were to do just like millennials versus boomers, it would be things like, millennials are a lot more tech savvy. They're not as handy. So, um, Wi-Fi capabilities and sometimes even just having a lot of gadgets. Like those are things that millennials really like. A well-wired home, basically.
Yes.
um, they grew up in the nice homes of their boomer parents, so definitely more turnkey versus a boomer who, they don't mind having to make a couple fixer-uppers. If they're an older boomer that is a bit wealthier, they are also looking for low maintenance because they might be traveling more now, and if they're
Hmm.
in retirement.
Hmm.
So things like that. So I think we talked about the sort of four questions. If I were to sort of take you through an example, so the four questions I had said earlier is like, who's buying in your neighborhood? What's their lifestyle? What's most important to them or would make their life easy? And then what are the features that you can add to your home that would provide that? So I'll give you an example. On the show, we did a house that a family was living in, but they were living in a neighborhood where a lot of university students were living as renters. So it was mostly investors that owned the homes in the neighborhood,
Hmm.
and they would rent them out as student housing.
Mm.
So although they had it set up as a family home, they had actually, in this particular case, they had actually put it on the market and it wasn't selling, and it had been on the market for about 3 months. So their problem was that they were just targeting the wrong type of buyer. It was set up as a family home, and everybody who was buying in that neighborhood was an investor looking to rent it out to students. So who's the buyer in that area? The buyer was an investor. What's their lifestyle? In this case, you would kind of look at the lifestyle of the investor who is actually buying the place, but also a little bit at the lifestyle of who's going to be actually living in the place. You want to kind of satisfy both so that when the investor looks at the property, they're like, oh yeah, I can rent this place really quickly type thing. So in that case, the lifestyle of an investor, for them, this property is probably extra income for them. They probably have another job, and this is their way of trying to increase their own income, make a little extra money on the side. The next question I had was what's most important to them or would make their life easier. In the case of the investor, what's most important to them is profits. Like the whole purpose of buying the house would be to make money and probably have as little headaches as possible because no one wants to be a landlord where it's a full-time job.
Hmm. Exactly.
so
Yeah.
so the next question is like what would be the features that you could add to this house to make it more, attractive to them? Well, what we did is we increased the number of bedrooms in the house so that more bedrooms equals you can rent out to more people, which means more income, which means more profits. So that would be attractive to a potential investor buyer. The next thing was we completely removed all the grass in the backyard because grass means more maintenance. You have to come cut the grass, maintain it, water it, all these things. So we completely removed the grass and made basically a deck in the entire backyard. So it's a very low maintenance backyard. it reduces the amount of headaches that the landlord needs to have because he doesn't have to pay anybody or do the work himself. And the property sold right away after doing that. And it's also a deck is really nice for the tenants there because they look at that and they're looking at ways to enjoy that backyard.
That is so cool. I love how you broke the questions down and then give example. I mean, that's really amazing.
Thanks.
Yeah. So do you guys do this for every show? Like I'm really curious now. So do you before the show, do you guys go look at the house, you chat with the sellers, and then you and the interior designer and the landscaper, all three of you come together and make a game plan?
Yeah, yeah. So basically, what we would do is go into the house, and we're given a budget as well. So, I mean, there's always a million things you can do to a house if there was no ceiling on the budget. But depending on the budget that the homeowners have, we look at, okay, what are the things that we absolutely need to do to make this house as sellable as possible?
That's amazing. I love that. Oh my God. That is so juicy. That's the biggest, that's the greatest. I think that's a really good way of breaking it down in terms of helping sellers to understand like what would make their home sell. Because the things that you're talking about, for example, you remove all the grass in the home, that may be very counterintuitive,
Mhm.
but then you're selling to investors. Investors don't care. They don't want maintenance, and then that makes total sense.
Yeah. And that's why it's so important to know who the buyer is, right? Because if it was, a young family with kids, a lot of times family with kids, like the reason they're buying a house is because they want their kids to play in the backyard,
Hmm.
kick a ball around. Well, if you create a deck, it defeats the whole purpose, right? So that's why different buyers and their lifestyles are going to have, it's going to, you're going to need different features to satisfy those needs.
Exactly. So,
Yeah.
National Association of Realtors, they just came out with a stat saying that the number one age group that is buying homes right now are the millennials. Do you agree or disagree?
Well, always like first time home buyers in general are typically the largest pool of
Hmm.
people that buy. So um, I think the reason I would agree in the sense for the most part that um, the largest group is always first time home buyers more than anything else. And they have the most number of transactions ahead of them in their lifetime versus someone who is a boomer. They stay in their homes longer. Um, you know what I mean? So the first time home buyers right now are definitely millennials. And then it depends on where you're living. Like I know, Toronto, where I'm at, is a really big city, and millennials are having a really hard time buying homes. And unless, they're coming out with student debt, then because it's a big city here, prices are really high. It's almost unreachable. And there's a couple studies that have come out where we are saying that millennials in our area are actually coming to terms with the fact that they may never own a home in their lifetime. They may have to rent forever. And
Hmm.
it's almost like sort of that New York City feeling where everybody's a renter and hardly anybody's an owner, right?
Yeah,
So it's sort of moving in that direction. So I think for the most part, I would say like whoever the first time home buyers are always the largest group in any market. And then it just depends on where you're at.
that's very cool. And then, are there any features and factors that are universal when it comes to real estate? I mean, like universal for all generations.
I would say layout is usually really important. I think that for the most part, most generations right now, at least from what I'm seeing, that's all I can really comment from is that, open concept layouts make rooms feel larger, and
Hmm.
people always like that. Bigger is
Right.
better for most
Hmm.
people. So I would say that's something that's pretty universal is opening up the layouts versus older homes, like especially where I'm at, older homes were often a lot more traditional, like your kitchen was separate from the living room, whereas now like maybe the family room and kitchen are all open so you can, sit down, have some dinner and watch TV at the same time type thing. And I think the open concept layout is something that most people like. And I mean, kitchens and bathrooms, those are pretty universal. Maybe the look of them may not be universal. Some people like different things, but I think having those rooms taken care of is important to all generations because you spend a lot of time there.
Exactly. And in your opinion, what is the number one cause that a house doesn't sell?
Number one would be that the market, aka the buyers, just don't see the value um, as a match to the features that you're offering or lack of features. So if it's not selling, it's like they're just not seeing that the price matches what you're offering, you know? Because you can list your house at whatever price you want to, but if people aren't budging or not even really interested, or you have a lot of people coming through and no one's putting an offer, at the end of the day, they're just not seeing the value for what you're offering.
So pricing is very important,
Yeah.
I would assume. Yeah.
Yeah, so you either need to change the price or you need to change the features of the home to match the price. It's either or. Condition and price, that's pretty much it, are not matching.
That's a really good way to point it, I'm sorry, to put it. I like to point it. How about number two and three? What are some other factors?
I think the only other thing really could be that you're marketing to the wrong type of buyer. So in that case that I was mentioning earlier, where there was a family living there was a family living in an area that was predominantly investors renting out to students. They were trying to sell the home as a family home, so they're marketing to families, but families don't want to live beside like frat houses. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
I think the only other thing after that is that you're just marketing to the wrong buyer, the wrong group of buyers.
that's true. It just reminds me of that movie with Zac Efron and Seth, whatever his name is, recently, where it's like this family living next to a frat house and they got into a
Oh yeah, yeah,
war.
I saw that.
That movie is so funny. Oh my God. I rarely like laugh out loud in movies, but I was like laughing like a fool in the movie theater. Oh my God. It was
Yeah,
so
that was
good.
kind of like this situation.
Yeah. So where can our listeners find you?
Okay, so I'm on Instagram, YouTube, and I've got a website. My website is www.lisainthecity.ca for Canada. um, I'm doing a little bit of a renovation and new staging on my site, so it'll be changing in the next little while. But the other place you can find me is on Instagram at Lisa in the City, and on YouTube, if you search Lisa in the City, you'll find me as well.
I love your YouTube channel. Like, I just love your different episodes because I find that you're so personable. Like you said, I mean, I think that's really important in real estate. You want to be very personable and very likable, but you still have a very strong point of view. And so I think that's really great.
Thanks.
Yeah. And what is the one tip you will give to homeowners who are thinking about putting their home on the market?
I would say definitely work with people who understand the neighborhood and know how to sell. And if you need to do a little bit, like just have a little bit of confirmation on your own, like something I'll do sometimes with homeowners is to actually take a look at some homes in in their own neighborhood to see what buyers are going to be seeing, because sometimes it's easy for your realtor to try and explain, this is what people are expecting in the neighborhood. And as a seller, unless you have been into all your neighbors' homes or apartments, wherever you live, it's sometimes hard to really imagine that. And so sometimes the best thing you can do to really just understand what's going on in your market is maybe go with your realtor or even check online the listings that are in your neighborhood to compare yourself to your competition.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for being on the show today. You were amazing. I love you.
I love you too, Cindy.
So that's it for today's show. Thank you so much for listening. Lastly, one of the new things I'm trying this year is to ask you guys if you have any questions for our guest, and that you would like me to ask on the show before we record the show. So if you do want to get into that, please get in our Facebook group, because I will be posting in there to ask for questions before I interview a guest. I'm also currently looking for more guests to be on the show for season 3. So if you know anyone or want to suggest someone, please let me know. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review and rating on iTunes, SoundCloud, or Stitcher. It only takes you 31 seconds to do so, but this will help us keep the show going. As usual, feel free to ask me any questions on the show notes or in our private Facebook group. You can find the show notes by going to www.stageformore.com. That's it. Have a fantastic week and happy staging!